A variety of reasons, a lot of reasons why the Civil War is so fascinating and remains that way today. It was America's first modern war in that you saw this technological development of weapons, which had horrible results. It was also the last romantic war where Americans in uniform went off to battle seeking some kind of glory on the battlefield. It also had a remarkable number of firsts that occurred. It was the first use of aerial warfare, hot air balloons. It was the first combat between ironclad warships. It was the first national income tax to support a war, first use of a modern communications network, the telegraph, newspapers, transportation. And it was also an extremely dramatic event, brother against brother, classmates against classmates, just a remarkable number of reasons why the Civil War is so fascinating. By many measures, Gettysburg was the decisive battle of the American Civil War. In the summer of 1863, the North had the South in the beginning of a stranglehold. Invasions throughout the western theater of the war, an increasingly effective naval blockade that was closing southern seaports. But Robert E. Lee's masterful defense in Virginia kept the war alive and kept Southern hopes for victory alive. But Lee realized that time for the South was running out, and so he proposed an invasion of the North, hoping to win a major battle on Northern soil that would end the war in a negotiated settlement and would provide the South with nationhood. This is the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, so that's a good reason to step back and look at the battle in a new and fresh way, and I think that's what the Illustrated Gettysburg Reader does. It's a collection of eyewitness reports with a historical narrative that connects them and puts them in the right context. And it's profusely illustrated with period drawings and photographs and other kinds of artwork from that era. There's really nothing else like it, I think. And so I think it makes an important contribution to the literature of Gettysburg and tells the story in a new and fresh way. Well, if you can read only one book about the Battle of Gettysburg, then I hope, obviously, it's the Illustrated Gettysburg Reader. This book presents the Battle of Gettysburg in a balanced way, North and South. And it tells it through the experiences of eyewitnesses who lived through the battle, or in some cases did not. It's also profusely illustrated, and it's connected with a fast-paced narrative that puts it all in historical context. So I think if there's one book that tells you the full story about the Battle of Gettysburg as told by people who were there, then this is that book. There's a great variety of eyewitness accounts in the Illustrated Gettysburg Reader by officers, soldiers, civilians, people who lived through the battle and some who died in the battle. And they come from a variety of sources, from letters, from diaries, from memoirs, from official records. And the great thing they have in common is that they are eyewitness accounts. And to me, there's nothing more powerful in history than the story of someone who was there. The accounts in this book really come from all over the country. They come from historical societies, from university libraries, from manuscript collections, Library of Congress, National Archives, government records. There's a great variety, and the thing that they have in common is that all of them reflect what it was really like to be at the Battle of Gettysburg. There were some things in this book that surprised even me as a historian, and in one of those that I really can't shake from my memory is the casualty report from the 6th North Carolina Infantry. And it's just a list of names and wounds, but when you study it, as you can in this book, you see the name of the soldier and the type of wound that he suffered. And when you think about it, that's really goes to the heart of military history. And it's very personal, and I think it's very powerful. I think one of the strengths of the Illustrated Gettysburg Reader is the collection of images that the reader will find in it. Period images, photographs, sketches, drawings, a variety of images, and all of which I think really carry the impact of what the battle was and what it was like to be seen and experienced by people who were there. Lee won on the first day at Gettysburg, and it looked like he had won the battle victory that he was seeking, and that maybe that the war was going to end in a Southern victory, and there would be Southern nationhood. But on the second day of battle, he found the Union Army was still there, and he failed to break it on attacks on both flanks. So the third day, he unleashed 13,000 troops under Generals George Pickett and James J. Pettigrew in what became famous as Pickett's Charge. tremendous courage and heroism on both sides, but the Northern Army prevailed and the Battle of Gettysburg became a decisive victory for the North. The Battle of Gettysburg had so many examples of American courage and sacrifice, and the illustrated Gettysburg Reader contains so many of them as well. One that comes to mind is that of 62-year-old General George Greene, who had designed the water system for New York City before the war and found himself defending Culp's Hill on the second day of the battle for the Union. He knew how to make people dig ditches and go to work, and he so fortified this hill that 3 hours of fighting failed to break his line. And that was a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice. The Battle of Gettysburg is filled with all sorts of irony. And one example was that of General John Reynolds, federal commander, who turned down an offer to command the Northern Army engaged at Gettysburg, and yet found himself as the senior commanding officer as the battle began. So he wound up with a job that he didn't want, and he was also killed on the first day of battle. I think so many of the troops engaged at Gettysburg, Northern and Southern, understood that they were involved in an important and epic and maybe a decisive battle. And both understood what was at stake here. And what was at stake was, would the South win a major victory on Northern soil, which could bring an end to the war and a Southern victory, or would Northern forces prevail and would the Union be preserved? And I think both sides understood that contest, and that's one reason why each fought so hard. The American Civil War would grind on for another 2 years after the Battle of Gettysburg and would produce this terrible harvest, 620,000 American dead. But everything changed really at Gettysburg. Never again would the South come so close to winning the Civil War. It was at Gettysburg that the fate of the nation and the Union really was determined, and that's why it's considered to be the decisive battle of the American Civil War. I think one of my favorite stories in the illustrated Gettysburg Reader is that of the 24-year-old soldier from the 1st Minnesota who penned a note in his diary on the cover page and asked that anyone who found his body would keep the money on his body, but would return his favorite ring and mail the diary to his father. That's very personal, and I think it also goes right to the heart of warfare. I think one of the most remarkable accounts in the illustrated Gettysburg Reader is provided by Lieutenant Colonel John R. Lane, who gave a speech at an anniversary of Gettysburg and provided this remarkable detailed account. He took command of his regiment near the end of the battle on the first day and was severely wounded. And after the war, he met the man who shot him, a sergeant from the 24th Michigan, and the two became very good friends. And it's just a reminder that these were all Americans, and these soldiers after the war reunited the nation with their spirit of reconciliation. What I hope the illustrated Gettysburg Reader conveys is a real sense of what it was like to be at the Battle of Gettysburg. I hope it goes beyond the one-dimensional words on a page kind of history and really conveys that human experience of being at the Battle of Gettysburg, a battle that was so important to the American Civil War and so important in the development of the United States as a nation.